It's that time of year. Time for some player projections. Team predictions tomorrow, player predictions today here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
Your Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On Sabres your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Sticky Joe DiBiase, glad to be talking to you today about the upcoming Sabre season. We are just about 48 hours away from the start of the Sabre season in Prague on Friday against the New Jersey Devils. Lot to get to in the coming days. Our final season projections, or only season projections, of the offseason. Today, we will have player projections. I have statted out every player for the Buffalo Sabres and where I believe they will end up, right around where they will end up. I'm kind of taking injuries out of it, and I have projected them based on a goal total that is somewhere in between last year and the year before. 2 years ago, where they were a top 5 team in the league in scoring. Last year, where they struggled to score. I do have them statted out somewhere in the middle there. So that's coming up on today's show. As always, if you want to check out our Locked On Sabres podcast on our YouTube channel. That's where you can watch the show. And I do encourage everybody on Twitter or YouTube or on our text line to throw me your point total. Tomorrow we'll do team projections for the entire Eastern Conference and for the season. And I want to know the number total from you that you think the Sabres are going to finish with this season. More 88-point projections, by the way. Dom Lucian from The Athletic today, I saw projected them for 88 points. A lot of people are projecting them for 88 points on the number. I don't know what it is about that number, but it does feel like that's the most popular number the Sabres have been projected with. That could be your number. Could be your number. Maybe it'll average out to be that number. We will see. So I want to get to all the players today, how I see their seasons going, and how I see their seasons going more specifically, statistically, on the season. So that's coming up. In terms of news and notes today, I did talk to Lindy Ruff on the morning show on WGR on Wednesday morning, and I did pick up some interesting tidbits, cool conversation. Lindy's always cool to talk to about his time over in Europe. We even got into a little bit of some of the older players that they're going to see in Europe, but I did get a couple of good, juicy tidbits, I think, from Lindy. One about playing his former team. We'll talk more about the Devils as we get closer to Friday. Of course, like in the next 48 hours. But I asked Lindy about that. Like, is it in his head that you're starting out with your first 2 games against the team that fired you like 6 months ago? And, you know, this is my first couple of opportunities getting the chance to speak to Lindy. And I am someone who's interviewed Sean McDermott repeatedly over the years on Fridays on WGR. And I know what I usually get from a Sean McDermott. It's, no, we're focused on the game and we're taking, it's a tough team. Like, you get the generic answer from McDermott. He doesn't want to step on any toes. He doesn't want to make any news, right? Lindy, like, maybe I shouldn't have been surprised because he's Lindy, but Lindy's like, yeah, it's in my head. Lindy admitted, like, yes, it is something that I think about. And he mentioned specifically his time with the Devils coming to an end because of injuries. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if he didn't say this part, but I wouldn't be surprised if he held some resentment towards the Devils. The fact that he kind of got scapegoated because their goaltending got injured and their best players got injured too. Their number 1 defenseman, Dougie Hamilton, missed a huge chunk of the season, if not all the season. Jack Hughes missed a chunk of the season. Again, their goaltending missed a bunch of the season, and Lindy kind of got scapegoated and got kind of called out by the GM after it happened. So I kind of understand where Lindy is coming from on that front, and it sounds like he's motivated to beat his former team in the first 2 games of the year. The other thing that I thought was really interesting that Lindy talked about, I asked him about the preseason and how physical the Sabres looked. And I asked him about the physicality in the preseason and kind of his ideology, if he wants everybody on the team doing that. And he did He said yes, but I liked why he said yes. He didn't just say, yes, we want to hit them. We want to be the tougher team. We want to intimidate the other team. For him, it was more plan of attack strategy. And I've never really thought about hits in this way, but it's obvious, right? It makes sense that Lindy talked about wanting to be a team that when you're on the forecheck or you're in the neutral zone along the boards, you want to jam the player. I don't need a bone-crushing hit. In fact, he kind of maybe said it might be better not to have the bone-crushing hit, but jam them. Jam them against the boards because, in the neutral zone, the example he used was that if a defenseman or a forward is skating through the neutral zone and a Sabre jams him in the neutral zone, then that is going to delay that player a second or two from getting to the zone, getting to his spot on the forecheck. And that 1 second, 2 second might be all the difference, or might just make it that much easier for your own defenseman to get the puck out of your own end. So he almost said it more as, I like those types of hits, those jams, because it makes it easier for our defensemen to get the puck out of their own end. And it makes it easier to defend neutral ice when you're stifling the opposing defenseman in their own end. So yes, I think the Sabres are going to be a more physical team this year, and that definitely was notable in the preseason. The one other news item to get to on today's show is that we found out today that there are going to be a couple of former Sabres in attendance at these games in Prague. One that we didn't hear, by the way, is Dominik Hasek. And I have to believe Hasek's going to be there somewhere, right? Like, former Sabre, it's in his home country. Like, he's not going to be there. I feel like he makes an appearance. I haven't seen that yet, though. I've seen Ryan Miller in Prague taking pictures with Sabre fans. So Miller's there. The Sabres haven't announced what he's doing there or that he'll be there in some official capacity. I might want to guess he is, though, because, or maybe he just decided, hey, Sabres in Prague. You want to go to Prague? And Ryan Miller's there. But Miller is in Prague. And then the Sabres did announce that Alesh Kotelik and Yaroslav Spacek are going to be in attendance for these games this weekend. And Kotelik did a Q&A, talked about Lindy coming back, talked about his memories with the team and how he still follows the team. Alesh Kotelik, maybe we should do our top 5 Czech Sabres of all time going into Friday. And I think Kotelik would he have to be number 1? I haven't looked this up beforehand. Probably number 1. Certainly, if I could just give a quick memory of Alesh Kotelik, 2 things I remember him for. Bomb slap shot. If he was fired up or if he was wound up from the point, he was going to shoot that thing 100 miles an hour. And 2, the shootout. Forehand, backhand, in the net every time. Made no sense how no goalie could ever pick up on it. 50% for his career. One of the best shootout players of all time. Went every time for the Sabres at some point because he was just the best at it. He was a great shootout king. I would still have him out there if I could. Dress him up. Dress him for Friday. Let him go out there and play in the shootout if the Sabres do end up there some way, somehow. When we come back, player projections for the 2024 season. Let's get to it. I've statted out every Sabre that is scheduled or projected to be in their regular lineup. We'll get to that when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We're presented here on the show by Gametime. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier, including 1 week, if you're listening to this on Thursday, 1 week from tonight, next Thursday, KeyBank Center for the home opener. And you can check out all the available tickets on Gametime. And of course, Gametime with Gametime Picks, filtering out all the fluff, show you only the incredible deals. They have their super deals, a lot of easy ways to save money when you're looking through your tickets. My favorite feature of the app, absolutely the seat views. It's just absolutely, you got to have it. I got to know what I'm looking at. I want to know my angle. Do I have a bird's eye view? Am I along the ice? Am I going to be in the corner down by the glass where the glass is kind of distorted, so it's kind of hard to see the other end of the rink? I want to know all of that before I'm purchasing my tickets, and you can do it all on Gametime. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are almost there, almost at the regular season. Sabres and Devils Friday at 1 o'clock Eastern time. I should say Eastern time. Some Sabre fans might be in Prague. And for you, it's going to be the game's going to be at night. Here it's not. Afternoon game. And then 10 a.m. on Saturday. So I want to get to my player projections for the season. And just as a precursor, I want to let you know that I have statted out Buffalo Sabres for a modest increase when it comes to goals on the season. I've got the Buffalo Sabres statted out for 269 goals this year. Last year, the Sabres scored 246 goals. So 23 more goals than they scored last year, about an extra goal every fourth game. The year before, they scored 296. So 296 2 years ago, 246 last year. I've got them at 269 on the year. So somewhere in between where they've been the last two seasons for the Sabres. Let's start with the forwards, and we will start right at the top. What have I statted out for every player this season? I think I've been pretty fair for most guys. And again, I didn't want to go crazy high with goal totals because I don't think this is going to be a top 10 team in the league in scoring. I think they'll probably find themselves somewhere in the middle of the league. Let's start with Tage Thompson. Tage Thompson, will he have a rejuvenated season? Will he go back to what he was 2 years ago? In my opinion, not quite. I do think he's going to take a big jump. I've got him at 38 goals on the year and 40 assists. So that is a 9-goal increase. That is a 13 assist increase. Gets him to 78 points on the season. I think that Thompson, I'm kind of in the middle on him. I think that his range of outcomes absolutely includes a 100-point season. That's the thing about Thompson. I'm kind of taking the average of what I think is possible for Tage Thompson, which is the high 70s. I think it is possible that he's somewhere in the 60s, that he is around 30 goals, which, listen, he was there last year with that. Banged up, got some injuries, right? And that's important. He's got to prove he can stay healthy this year. But I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. It would be his second best season statistically. I've got Tage Thompson, 38 goals and 40 assists. I would bet most fans will think that sounds pretty low and that they would want me to up him a little bit more. But I'm not doing it just yet. JJ Peterka, number 2 in my scoring list for the forwards, 35 goals and 35 assists, which would be the biggest jump of any Sabre I have statted out coming up this season by percentage, by importance. Peterka, 35 goals. I mean, that's a 7-goal increase from where he was last year. I do think him playing on the top line more regularly is going to see that number increase. And I also think him being on the number 1 power play unit is going to see that number increase as well. An assist total that rises, by the way, by 13 points. He goes from a 50-point player to a 70-point player. I think that is fair for JJ Peterka, who would be playing on the top line. I struggled a little bit with my next guy on this list because I do think Jack Quinn is going to have the benefit of being on the number 1 power play unit. He does not have the benefit that Peterka does of playing with 2 stellar line mates on the top line. He's playing on the second line and might be asked to carry the second line offensively more than Peterka will on line 1. That being said, I've got Jack Quinn statted out for 28 goals and 25 assists, 53 points on the year. It's almost identical to what Peterka did last year. I gave Quinn a couple more assists on the season because I think he's a little bit better as a playmaker, just a tad, at least right now. So Quinn, 28 goals, 25 assists. I think a lot of people would take that for Jack Quinn. That is him establishing himself as a top 6 forward in the NHL and showing that he is worthy of another contract, maybe even a long-term contract after this season is over. It is hugely important that Quinn has a season like that. They need him to have a season like that. He can't be injured all year. They can't afford for him to be injured all year. And they can't afford for him to kind of, take a modest step forward. He's got to take a big step forward, and I think this would be that. I've got Alex Tuch statted out for 25 goals and 28 assists. That is 53 points on the season for Alex Tuch. Same point total as Jack Quinn. I think Quinn's a better player, well-rounded offensively at this point. I like Tuch. I don't have any problem with Tuch. I think Tuch, though, will even him out on points because he's playing on the top line. But I do see his production coming down a little bit again I wonder, I might want to project he's not going to be in the number one power play unit all season. That right now, Tuck is on that top unit, but eventually maybe they might try Cozens on that top unit. They might try Benson on that top unit. I think you might see Tuck's power play numbers go down a little bit because of his ice time. So I do think you're going to see a modest decline from Alex Tuck again. Goals-wise, I guess I have him going a little bit further up, but I think the reason I have his number going down, I don't even think he's going to play worse, it's just in the past, Jeff Skinner, most years, he had the 1 year where he did do this, but other years, Jeff Skinner's not a playmaker. Jeff Skinner's not setting guys up. He's a goal scorer, and he's someone that's capitalizing on opportunities. And I think Tuck might slide into that role a little bit more because the left winger on that line now is much more well-rounded and capable as a playmaker to me than Skinner was. Peterka there might allow Tuck to score a few more goals, maybe have a few fewer assists, because I think Peterka is going to have more assists than Skinner did last season. Next on my list, a guy you need a big jump from, Dylan Cozens. I don't know what to do with Dylan Cozens. It's a really tough one. Really tough one on Cozens because he had a monster year 2 years ago and he had a dreadful year last season. 31 goals in 2022-23, 18 goals last season. I've got Dylan Cozens statted out to go up in goals, to go up in points, but not to match what he did 2 years ago. I've got him for 21 goals and 32 assists, which would be 53 points on the season. I need to see Cozens look right again. I'm worried. I'm absolutely worried because Thompson, I have an easy explanation for why he had a down year. It was injury. Skinner, I had an easy explanation for why he had a down year. Age would come to mind. Tuck, I had an easy explanation because I've seen Alex Tuck for 8 years. I know what his baseline is, and I knew he was going to regress because that was natural. That was going to happen. We didn't really know what Cozens was. 68 points turned into 47, and it could have been worse than that. Remember, he piled up some points at the end of the year. Cozens, 21 goals, 32 assists. I think that's fine for a number 2 center. I think I would want more. I would be disappointed with this number that I have set it out for him, but I think that is, to me, most likely that that's around where he's going to end up on the season. I think his line mates not having Peterka anymore on a regular basis will also damage him just a little bit because I do think Zach Benson, while I love Zach Benson, I love watching Zach Benson, at 19 years old, I just don't think it's fair to ask for him to be as good as JJ Peterka was last year, which is who Cozens played with a lot. Benson, though, that being said, is next on our forward list. What do I have Zach Benson statted out for? After last year, 11 goals, 19 assists for 30 points, I have him taking a step forward, getting up to 17 goals on the season and 30 assists from 30 points to 47 points. Line mates is a big reason for this. I think him being a little bit more physically mature is a big reason for this, but I don't feel comfortable going higher than that because I still do think physically he still has further to go. He's, I think, taking a step. I think he can get a lot faster still. I think he can get a lot more physical. He can get more built, if you will, in the coming years. So I still think it's a little early to ask for the monster breakout from Zach Benson. But getting close to that 50-point threshold, I don't think is unrealistic at all, given that he's, I think, going to be on the second line for most of the year. Now we get to the bottom 6. What is right to expect offensively from the bottom 6? I've talked about this offseason. Now, this is one of my big question marks for the Sabres this year is secondary scoring. Do they have any? I've got Ryan McLeod setting career highs this year with 14 goals, 17 assists for 31 points. That is by 1, the most points of his career. It would be the most goals by 2. Slight upgrade because I think his ice time will be a little bit higher than the 14 minutes that he averaged in Edmonton. Maybe it's 15, 16. I wouldn't put it much higher than that. I do think a player that never, ever, ever played on the power play might get a little bit of power play time this year. Maybe a wee bit. A guy gets hurt. He rotates in. Last year in Edmonton, 2 years ago in Edmonton, never happened. And, of course, he's going to get some shorthanded opportunities. I've got Ryan McLeod taking a little bit of a step forward offensively from where he was in Edmonton, but largely the same. Almost actually really exactly the same. I just think the opportunity will be just a slight bit higher. Next up, I'm not high in Jason Zucker. I'm not. I'm sorry. It's not my favorite signing. It's not my favorite player. He's fine. I don't have a problem with him. He is better for their bottom six than Jordan Greenway, Peyton Krebs. Like, I think he's a better player than that. And I don't care about the $5 million because they're so far below the cap anyway. I've got Jason Zucker, who last year in total had 14 goals and 18 assists in Arizona and Nashville, going 12 goals and 10 assists. Now, he made a comment this week about wanting to score 20 goals. I don't think it's going to happen. I think playing with Ryan McLeod and a defensive role on the line 3, I don't think he's going to get there. I think he's going to be below that. I think at his age, 33 years old in January, not someone that I think is getting better, of course. And maybe it's notable that last year on a bad team in Arizona, he had a tough time getting ice time, you know? So I've got Zucker at 12 goals, 10 assists, which I would want more, but that's where I've got him. I'm going to go, I guess, out on a limb a little bit here because I don't think this guy is starting the season for the Sabres. I don't know if he's going to end up playing in Prague, but I've got Yuri Kulik for 10 goals and 8 assists. I think he's going to play. I don't know when. Maybe it's not till later in the year, kind of like when Drew Stafford showed up at the end of 2007 and put up some goals, when Tyler Ennis showed up at the end of 2011 and put up some goals. I think that you're going to see Kulik somewhere in 2025 early on, and I do think he's a good player. I think he's going to be ready for the NHL. He's a good goal scorer. I think when he's on the team, he plays on the power play. That will help his production as well. 10 goals, 8 assists, playing, maybe he plays 40 games. Maybe he plays 30 games on the year. Somewhere in there, I think Kulik's going to earn a roster spot at some point during the season. Time for the fourth line. Sam Lafferty is next up. 10 goals, 12 assists. Nicholas Aube-Kubel, 8 goals, 10 assists. Beck Malenstein, 8 goals, 6 assists. That fourth line, everybody chipping in just a little bit here and there, but nobody jumping off the page. And then finally, the two guys that I think eventually will be healthy scratches, one of which might be a healthy scratch to start the year. Peyton Krebs, I just don't think he's going to play a lot. I don't see how he gets in the lineup other than injuries on a regular basis. I've got him for 5 goals and 7 assists. I'm almost done. I'm almost out on Krebs being a regular for the Sabres going forward. And then Jordan Greenway, I think, is somebody that at some point early is going to lose his regular spot in the lineup, and I bet would even be traded for a mid-round pick or waived something. I don't see a spot for him in the lineup for the entire season, so I've got him at 4 goals and 2 assists. I think that's going to come crashing down. I don't see much of a role for Jordan Greenway going forward on the Buffalo Sabres roster. When we come back, what about defensemen? What about Dahlin? What about Byram? Power? We'll get to all that when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast with Sneaky Joe DiBiase. We are presented here on the show by FanDuel Sportsbook. So hockey, of course, starts this week. Basketball in a couple of weeks. You've got college football. It is the October sports equinox. You've got sports every day. Baseball playoffs, of course, going on right now. And the kingpin of all, the NFL. And hey, NFL fans, you could start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view some live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com to check it all out. Final segment here on the Locked On Sabres podcast with Sneaky Joe DiBiase. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. If you want to check out our text line, you can join at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres and get in by the time the games start, because we have, I love our text line during games, seeing everybody's reaction in real time. All right, let's get to the defenseman. Point projections for the season. Forward-wise, I tried to be a little not crazy over the top because I was looking and I saw 269 goals. I wanted to give other guys more, but I'm not going higher on the goal total. And if you want to go, you don't want to change the goal total. If I want to add goals to Tage Thompson, I've got to take goals away from somebody else. So that's where I ended up. How about the defenseman? Defenseman, I think Rasmus Dahlin is in line for his best offensive season. I think he's ready. I think he is one of the best defensemen in hockey. I think he might be the best well-rounded defenseman in the NHL. 24 years old. Let's go. Here we go. I think we're talking Norris caliber, voting in the top 4 this year for Dahlin. I think he almost smashes his career high point total of 73 this year. I've got him statted out for 83 points on the season, 13 goals and 70 assists. I think he's going to rack up the assists this year. Last year, 20 goals, I've got that coming way down. I think he scored out of necessity last year. I think he shot the puck probably a lot more than he wanted to. 235 shots was 65 more shots than he had in the 21-22 season. It was 31 more shots than he had in 22-23. I think the shot totals come down. I think the playmaking goes up. Dahlin, 13 goals, 70 assists, which I think will have him in the Norris conversation. If that doesn't happen this year, he will have a year like that, maybe where he gets close to 90 points at some point soon. I struggled in standing out Bowen Byram because I want to be optimistic about him, but I'm on the fence. I just don't know what to expect. So I think it's possible he doesn't. It looks like a bad trade at some point during the year, and we're really not happy. And I think it's also possible he has a huge breakout season because that's his talent level. 4th overall pick for a reason. He's flashed that talent at times. I've got him setting career highs in points, 9 goals, 31 assists. I've got him at 40 points. His previous career high was 29, which was actually last season. Although 2022-23 in Colorado, he played exactly half the games, actually 42 games out of 82, had 24 points. So I guess points per game, it wouldn't be his career high. It would be just below where he was in Colorado. But I've got him statted out for 40 points on the year. Injuries, of course, will be something to watch for Byram as well. I got him at 9 goals, a little bit more than the other defensemen because I think he's got a good shot. Next up, Owen Power. Owen Power, I've got one more year of him before he breaks out. I've got one more modest, good year where he puts up some numbers, he controls the game, little bit of an offensive uptick, but I think the big jump is at least one more year away for Owen Power. I've got him at 5 goals, 35 assists, 40 points, which would be a career high for Owen Power, playing around 23 minutes a night. Power play usage, for now, he's still on that unit. I wonder if that will stick, though. Henry Jokiharju is next up. These defensemen are kind of tough to project, right? Because it's almost random. Like, they're just involved when it's secondary assists or, they get a shot from the point that finds its way through. I got nothing controversial. Jokiharju, 4 goals, 15 assists. Connor Clifton, 2 goals, 8 assists. And Matthias Samuelsson, 1 goal and 15 assists. That's what I got for the bottom end of the depth chart. Everybody else combined, a couple of goals here and there, but nothing crazy, nothing over the top, 2-3 goals max. So I've got, and that part of that's Kulik getting 10, right? You can almost include Kulik with others and go 13 goals by guys that are Rochester guys, maybe. That's if Kulik gets sent down. We actually don't know if he will. All that together, 269 goals, 436 assists, which is right around the middle of where they were last year and where they were the year before. Let me know if you hard disagree with anybody that I statted out. If you think who should be higher, who should be lower in my projections. Let me know what you think. Go ahead. Tell me I'm wrong. I want to hear who you think I'm wrong about and why you think I'm wrong. Let me know. Join subtext.com/LockedOnSabres if you want to check out our text line. You can do that on Twitter as well. I'm at Sneaky Joe Sports, and the podcast accounts at Locked On Sabres. All right, team projections are next. So thanks, everybody, for listening to the Locked On Sabres today. And we've got one more show before we get games. That's right. Yeah, tomorrow we'll have one more show, and then it is game time on Friday against the New Jersey Devils. That is coming up on the Locked On Sabres podcast with Sneaky Joe DiBiase. Thanks for making us your first listen. Now go make your next listen Locked On NHL, all the stuff getting into the NHL season, or Locked On Bills with Joe Marino ahead of Bills and Texans on Sunday. We'll talk to you tomorrow, though, here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.